Boxing truth here. Let me talk about this hoe-ass bitch, Floyd Mayweather, who is continuing to make statements through the media, mostly through Ben Thompson, one of the biggest Floyd Mayweather fanboys out there. I'm not hating Ben Thompson. I understand you have to dick ride to get access to him. If you don't, then you'll be cut off like everybody else. So, I understand the dick riding, don't worry. Anyways, Mayweather is still making statements through the media to keep himself relevant in the sport of boxing because no one believes his fake-ass retirement. He's insisting that he's retired, but no one really believes it. So he's making statements to remain relevant in boxing, so when he does come back, the fans will be interested and he'll gain some momentum, hopefully for him. And hopefully, for his sake, the fans will have forgotten the boring-ass fights, the disappointing performances in his pay-per-view fights, the cherry-picking, the hype jobs he fought, and the bullshit rigged fight that took place on May 2nd that did more harm than good for the sport of boxing. Now Mayweather is trashing Golovkin through the media, and he's already putting a shield in front of him for that fight to be made. And Mayweather constantly does this. He always puts shields for the biggest threats out there to him. He's done it throughout his entire career. And he's doing it again for another threat that a lot of fans and media are putting pressure on him to fight. I don't need to see Mayweather fight Triple G. I don't. I think Triple G knocks him out. I just think he's too strong, too big, and too technically sound. Besides, Mayweather will just give up too much ground. I mean, he'll be literally looking like he's running around the ring, running away from Golovkin, more so than he did against Manny Pacquiao. So I don't need to see that fight. Don't care to see that fight. Doesn't matter because, according to Floyd's word, Golovkin needs to beat Andre Ward for him to fight him. He always does it. He puts shields to his biggest threats. He did it with Manny Pacquiao for 5 years, ducked his biggest payday for 5 years, and opted to fight guys he knew he could beat, guys that with much easier styles to deal with for less money. Still big money. He still made a lot of money for those fights, but way less compared to a Manny Pacquiao fight. So he kept ducking his biggest payday. Kept using every excuse in the book, from drug testing to Manny Pacquiao wants too much money to Bob Arum doesn't want to do business with Mayweather. It took Les Moonves to threaten Heyman and Mayweather an ultimatum and cancel their fucking contract for Mayweather to finally fight Manny Pacquiao. It took place. People have their differences of opinions. It is what it is. However, that fight did more harm than good for boxing. The fact is, the fight, it was a shitty fight. It was a big disappointment, and it did a lot more harm than good for the sport. Just look at the pay-per-view numbers ever since that fight. But this is the norm for Mayweather. He's constantly done this throughout his entire career. He ducked and dodged the biggest threats at 130, 135, at 140, 147. He's done it throughout his entire career. And he's been able to fool fans into thinking that he's TBE and he's the GOAT and that he's unbeatable, but the reality is it's just an illusion created by Al Heyman. Mayweather's not unbeatable. He's lost twice already. I've seen him lose twice in fights. His real record is 46-2-1. It took him 2 tries to beat a C-level fighter in Marcos Maidana. It's funny as hell when Mayweather fanboys overrate his opponents. I mean, I get a good laugh out of it, though. I mean, it's funny as hell, though. I mean, when I hear Mayweather fanboys talk about his resume, they'd be like, oh, man, Mayweather had a killer resume. He fought killers like Philip Endo. And I mean, what the fuck? Philip Endo? Seriously? Who the fuck is Philip Endo? Did you even know who Philip Endo was before he fought Floyd Mayweather? What the hell did he do after he fought Floyd Mayweather? Exactly nothing. He didn't do shit. He didn't do shit before he fought Floyd. He had a built-up record fought a bunch of nobodies, tomato cans in South Africa, and knocked them out. He didn't knock out no world beaters. He didn't knock out anybody. He didn't fight anybody. Had a built-up record. And Floyd avoided his biggest threats by fighting these guys. He did it in 2003. It was disappointing enough that he kept taking showcase after showcase after he beat Janero Hernandez for his first world title. He did fight Angel Manfredi, who was rated in the top 10. I'm going by Ring Magazine's ratings, and I'm doing this off the top of the dome. So if I make a mistake, my bad. I'm doing it off the top of the dome. He fought Angel Manfredi. He fought Jesus Chavez. Two guys that were rated in the top 10 of the Ring Magazine ratings. However, he took a lot of showcases in between for guys that he shouldn't have been fighting. But I get it. He was milking the HBO contract. HBO those days were overpaying fighters to stay on their network because network television at that time was still involved in boxing. So HBO overpaid those guys to keep them on their network. They keep them away from NBC and Fox and all those other networks, CBS, shit like that. So it was disappointing enough that he got a strap, and he kept fighting voluntaries. A lot of them, some of them very weak too, guys that really didn't deserve shots at the title. And he didn't unify. He avoided his biggest threats. He didn't fight Acelino Freitas. He didn't fight Joel Casamayor. In my opinion, he probably would have beaten Acelino Freitas, but he didn't fight him. The biggest threat was Joel Casamayor. He didn't fight him. He didn't want to fight a southpaw in his prime with footwork and boxing ability, an Olympic gold medalist, and a strong straight left hand that had power that Mayweather always gets tagged by against the southpaw. So he didn't want that work. So he moved up, fought Jose Luis Castillo, and lost the fight the first time. Got a gift decision. Stunk it out in the rematch. Some people, even the judges, all three judges for that fight had it close. 115-113. He barely squeaked by Castillo. In a very boring, shitty fight. Had to stunk it out to win that fight. You know, he had to fight like a bitch to beat him. And again, he avoided his biggest threat, and he did it in 2003. Following the two fights with Jose Luis Castillo, he took on two handpicked guys, two much more beatable foes, instead of going after the top dogs in the lightweight division, unifying. He didn't do it. And I know why. He didn't want to fight Paul Spadafora. He didn't want to fight him. It was all wrong for him. A southpaw who was versatile, could box, was tough as nails. He didn't want that work because of the sparring session he had with him. I'm sure a lot of y'all watched it. I'm sure you saw how Spadafora schooled him and pretty much showed Mayweather that his defense wasn't shit. Kept getting tagged up, marked up in that sparring session. Mayweather, he fought hard in the sparring session. He showed some resistance, but overall he got his ass whooped, and he knew that he was defeated in that sparring session. I don't put too much emphasis in that sparring, but he got his ass whooped in that sparring session. And Mayweather Sr. thanked Spadafora's team. He told him, look, thank you for that. My son needed that ass whooping. And the excuse is that, Mayweather was out of shape. It was the beginning. No, that's bullshit. He did 7 hard rounds with Spadafora. If you're not in shape, you wouldn't be doing that much work with a world champion like Spadafora at the time. He just got the best of him. That's all it was. He couldn't get the better of Spadafora, and he didn't fight him. He wouldn't even fight Leonard Doreen. So the first 2 titles of his career was disappointing because he didn't unify. He did the same thing at 140. He fought DeMarcus Corley coming off a loss. Had a tough fight. Corley marked him up a little bit in that fight. Then he cherry picks an Unamas level opponent, Henry Bucelis, one of the biggest handpicked opponents in boxing history. I mean, this guy Henry Bucelis was fighting on Solo Boxeo, the fight prior to Mayweather in Puerto Rico. I mean, the guy didn't belong in the ring with Mayweather, so why was Mayweather fighting this guy? Just makes you scratch your head. And it is what it is. It was a showcase. He got money for it, got paid, fighting an Unamas level fighter. Then he fights Gotti. I understand that. This is prize fighting. He went for the money. That was his first pay-per-view fight, so I can't knock him for that fight. But he avoided his biggest threat. He avoided Kasazu. Didn't fight him. Then 147. And this is where, Mayweather's career changed. Look at Mayweather's body at 140 when he first entered 147. He's a lot smaller. He's a lot, he looks like a fighter moving up in weight. Now look at him now. Look at him at his last fight, his last few fights. The guy's jacked. He's big. And he doesn't put his fight night weights anymore. It's always question marks. Because he's getting pressured to fight Triple G. He doesn't want to reveal his fight night weight, because I bet is probably at and over 160. And if he reveals that, people will be like, yo, man, you could fight Triple G. He's not much bigger than you. So he doesn't want to reveal his weight. And he want to act like he only weighed 149 pounds when he fought Pacquiao. Fuck out of here. Anyways, he moves up to welterweight. Cherry picks Charmbe Mitchell to fight at his first fight at welterweight. A guy who spent his career fighting at 140 pounds, was coming off a knockout loss to Kasazu. Not much of an impressive. He did knock him out, but he'd been knocked out before that. Fight Stab Judah coming off a loss. Cherry picks Baldemir instead of fighting the biggest threat at that weight at the time, which was Antonio Margarito. Would have gotten an $8 million payday to fight him, but opted to fight Baldemir instead, because we all know why. He always took the path of least resistance. Always avoided his threats in every division. Didn't fight Paul Williams. Waited 5 years to fight Pacquiao. Fought a bunch of hype jobs like Guerrero, Victor Ortiz. Who else? Maidana twice. Just a disappointing career overall. Never beat the biggest threat in any of the divisions in their prime. Waited 5 years to take the biggest payday of his career. That's how you knew it was a duck. He kept avoiding his biggest payday. I always say, this is prize fighting. Go after the biggest prize. But he wouldn't do that. Instead, he opted always for the path of least resistance. Always took the easier fights. Yeah, he got paid money well, but he wasn't getting paid the richest prize. And now, he's once again throwing another shield for another threat. And if he says if he comes back, he's only looking at one name, and that's Danny Garcia. Once again, opting for the path of least resistance. Now, Danny Garcia, I believe he's underrated. I believe he can fight. I think he's a pretty good fighter. Head to head, I think he would beat Sean Porter. But when it comes to Keith Thurman, stylistically, Thurman has a bad style for Danny Garcia. However, Danny Garcia is tougher than Keith Thurman. He takes a punch better. Keith Thurman can get hurt, but Mayweather can't hurt anybody nowadays. His hands are so brittle. He's not punching with much force. Can't even put scratches on his opponents. That's another thing. Why does he want? He doesn't want to fight Keith Thurman. Like, is he really shook of Keith Thurman? He's constantly putting a shield when it comes to Keith Thurman. Like, when they put pressure on him for him to fight Keith Thurman last September, before he announced he was going to fight Berto, he was like, yo, if Keith Thurman wants to fight, he's got to get past Errol Spence. He put a shield, like he always does, for his biggest threats. Like, what's up with that? He don't want to fight Keith Thurman. That's the guy he should be thinking about fighting. Because let's say he has a spectacular performance on June 25th against Porter. He's not going to fight Keith Thurman. He's going to fight Danny Garcia, a guy who's still developing into the welterweight division, who has only fought two faded naturally smaller fighters in Malignaggi and Guerrero. If Thurman beats Porter, he's still a world champion. He's still an undefeated champion. and he's the legit WBA champion now since Floyd Mayweather retired, and the WBA promoted him. So I don't know what's up with that. Like, he's choosing the path of least resistance if he comes back as well. He won't even think about fighting Thurman when that's the guy he should be fighting. I mean, that guy, he's been in the division a lot longer. And if he wins on June 25th, he's coming off a big win, a much better win at welterweight than Guerrero's had thus far. Guerrero, he fought Thurman's leftovers in Guerrero his last fight, and he beat Malignaggi. Two guys that are faded, and Guerrero didn't do shit at welterweight. So it is what it is. Floyd's gonna continue this illusion and fool his fanboys that he's actually unbeatable, but he's not. He's been exposed a lot over the past year by Thomas Hauser, the writer that's going in on Al Heyman and the PBC as I speak in this 5-part series that he's released 4 parts of it, and part 5 is going to be released tomorrow. Can't wait to read it. I'm hearing that's the most juiciest of the entire piece of what he wrote about Al Heyman and the PBC. But he's also exposed Floyd. I mean, the illegal IV situation, the abnormal testosterone levels. I mean, what's up with that, man? How the hell is your testosterone levels lower than that of an 80-year-old man's? That shit doesn't add up. And then people are gonna claim that Manny Pacquiao is using, but yet the truth is there's more evidence on Floyd using than Manny Pacquiao. Seriously. All we got about Pacquiao is some stupid-ass drink that Ariza gave him. That's all we got. And it's pretty weak sauce because Ariza sued Freddie Roach for those comments he made about the drink, and the case ended up getting thrown out in court. It got dismissed. So there's not much to go on. I mean, Manny Pacquiao has done stringent drug testing. He's done VADA. Mayweather has not. He's opted for USADA, whose reputation is in shambles because all they do is bend the rules and freaking hide positive drug tests. 18 days after the fact, you got an exemption for a TUE, and the Nevada Commission and Bob Arum and Manny Pacquiao weren't informed 18 days after the fact. 6 times the amount of fluid allowed as well. And it could be used to dilute your blood for perhaps to mask some PEDs that you may be using. It is what it is. But I mean, you look at the evidence and it's overwhelming. I mean, I've known about Mayweather's alleged PED drug use for years. There's already been rumored 3 positive drug tests in the past, 3 of them. And when Manny Pacquiao wanted his ass to release his all of his drug test results dating from all his fights that he administered USADA for testing, Mayweather settled out of court. Pacquiao was willing to release all his drug test results on the table, but Mayweather was not. He settled out of court real fast, paid off whatever the sum he paid to Manny Pacquiao, and it wasn't cheap either. It was a big ass sum. But it is what it is. Mayweather's going to keep throwing up shields to protect his a protected, manufactured record administered by cherry picking and fighting this type of styles that he can deal with, being forced to fight Manny Pacquiao and having a bullshit rigged fight, having Dave Moretti giving him every single freaking round, except the rounds where Manny beat the shit out of Floyd in rounds 4 and 6. But, you know, Mayweather's fanboys are going to ride with him no matter what. No matter the evidence that comes out about him, the constant ducks and always going for the path of least resistance. Whatever, man. Fuck Floyd Mayweather. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.